practicing for 20 years or more in the Hungarian elections that in the Hungarian election system or political system there are many methods of how the power is influencing voters, how those parties, politicians who have power locally are having influence on voters. So in the previous elections, we in some places, especially I was an activist in the 8th district of Budapest, we had activities with which we were trying to minimize the influence of voter fraud on the outcomes of the elections. And in 2021, we decided to extend this knowledge on how to fight voter fraud and make a program for the national elections, for the parliamentary elections. So the program's name is Clear Election, and I will try to, yeah. There were many participant organizations, and there was a core coalition. The core coalition was formed by 4 organizations. I'm representing Civil College Foundation. Dani is representing the Hungarian Liberties Union. And we worked together with Political Capital and László Robert, who just had his presentation before the break, and Ahang, which is an online platform for petitions, but also they are the organization who helped on the civic side to organize the preliminary primaries, the preliminary elections last year and the year before for the mayor's position. What we did is after a series of internal discussions and development and workshops, we developed a training program that was open for activists, for civic groups who are who want to somehow get involved in elections, but are not actually working close to any of the people running for a seat. So we made a training for civic society members on how to fight voter fraud. Also, we made booklets that people could distribute about this problem. Then we created a communication campaign to reach out to as many voters as we could with the message that buying votes, selling votes is illegal, and there are a lot of other forms of influence that we find problematic, and to give them ways of how to deal with it. The Hungarian Liberties Union has, and Dani will talk more about it, has a history of helping citizens during the elections and also in the period of the campaign if they find any problems or if their right to vote is influenced or taken. So we had lawyers who were helping, and then we organized activists on the street who were in 9 counties and were watching the elections outside of the polling stations. Some of you know that in the Hungarian election system there is no legal way to have independent voter monitoring. Only delegates of the parties are allowed to be in the voting stations, polling stations, and monitor, watch the elections, or the international monitoring organizations, and also the third party is the media. So what we did is we had an informal network of activists who were watching elections outside the polling stations, and we had close contact with the media who were allowed to go into the polling stations and report if any fraud was happening. And also we had a possibility to have the help of the lawyers to make appeals and report to the police if anything is happening. So this was happening on the election day, that we had more than 250 people on the street. We also had a help from some Roma organizations, around 80 people who were distributing flyers before the elections and had and were also reporting if they see anything. And we also had forums in March and the end of February in areas where there are a lot of people who are living in poverty and are being influenced. And what we have seen is cases of illegal mobilization, so where voters were taken by cars or buses to the polling stations to vote. We saw people being given money for their votes, or being given food or other kinds of gifts for their votes. These are some of the actual cases that we have seen. And there's one more thing I wanted to tell is I mean, what we were concentrating on is the election day, on how on election day people are illegally mobilized or bought and influenced. But actually the system is much bigger, and it's not only happening on the election day, it's happening before. So it's happening through propaganda, as Robbie was telling. It helps. It's happening through rumors. Like in this election, in many communities, people were spreading the rumors that if the opposition wins, then our sons are going to be taken to Ukraine to fight. So that was a common rumor that people were telling. There is a chain of influence. How local power relations influence people, either by those who are giving jobs for people, so they are afraid of losing their jobs, or by social security. So there are local either public workers who are being influenced, or people who work for a company that is influenced by politicians. And there's also, you might have heard the news about the ballots which are in the neighboring countries, so which are sent by mail, but this is something we didn't have the capacity to work with. And what this red thing is the chain of how the government's power or Fidesz power is influencing the local voters. So there is always a representative from the government who is having a connection with the local mayors or the local leaders of the minority organizations or other kind of influential people, and telling that European money or investments are going to come to this region or to your village only if you vote for Fidesz. And through this chain also, in many cases, there is money being distributed just before the elections. So basically this is the structure I wanted to tell, and Dani may tell you more about the actual frauds that we have.
Thank you. I will be very brief. First of all, sorry for the help. It's not because I would be impolite, but my head is sunburned, so that's it. So what we experienced in the legal field is that probably legal tools are overrated when it comes to election frauds. And it's mostly because of the fact that election committees require an extreme level of evidence. So probably only a group of police officers would be sufficient to prove an election fraud in this system. We saw dozens of cases of illegal busing of voters. In the Hungarian legal system, it's forbidden to use a bus or a car with a capacity of a minimum 9 seats. And interestingly, people organizing frauds realize that using a car under 9 seats is legal. However, we are completely convinced that using a car 20 times a day for transporting people is still unlawful, and because it's still against the bona fides, this is a fraud as well. However, it seems that the election committees do not share this point of view, and therefore most of these complaints were completely rejected. Furthermore, what Moni already mentioned is that in the very poor settlements, there is still this habit of distributing food on the day on election day, and we also filmed some cases when mostly meat was distributed among voters, and the election committee didn't bring a decision on this case for days, and we had to turn to the National Election Committee to order the local election committee to make a decision. And they did it. Of course, nothing happened. Nothing was proven. It became clear that legal procedures have their own importance and have their own limits as well. So therefore, we have to seek other tools and instruments in order to prevent election frauds. And our experience also shows that the simple fact that activists are on the spot and people who might participate in an election fraud might confront with them absolutely reduces the number of election frauds. So there were probably dozens of prevented election frauds, and yesterday one of the activists participated in this project, Danny, sitting over there, told us that in one case it turned out that according to the original plans, 400 voters were meant to be transported to the polling station, and at the end it turned out that only 100 were transported because of the effective step up of activists. So the main takeaway from this project is that within this framework, legal tools are secondarily in importance, but personal presence and the actions of brave activists might bring a change and might be effective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for keeping the time. So this was the example of Hungary where people were out on the streets. We will show another example from Romania. And
if you have the present.
Yes, I do. There you go.
Hello. It's working? Yeah, the mic? Perfect. Yeah, sure. I can use this one actually. Yeah. Okay. Hi. My name is Cosmin, and initially the title of the presentation was Strange Hobbies, but I changed it because I thought it was more proper to talk about election monitoring. It's more formal, and I want to build upon what you said and you will see that we have many similarities. So I enjoy the previous speakers as well before the break, but I will get down and dirty a bit in the trenches, and let's roll up our sleeves and see how democracy looks like directly from the polling station. A couple of things about me. I am many things to many people, but for the sake of this discussion, I'm the communication person at Funky Citizens, an NGO that was founded 10 years ago. Actually, we launched after the 2012 parliamentary elections formally. I worked in advertising before, and this is why I had the communication department, but because we are a small NGO, I'm also the IT department. So yeah, maybe you know that. Okay, so a couple of key points I will be going through. I will not talk about mobilizing, that's out. I forgot to take that out, but we'll talk about mostly election monitoring. So let's get into it. Before, let's have a quick disclaimer. So tech is not the solution to everything, right? Thank you for agreeing. Yes, I see some heads nodding here, because I'm very tired of hearing about civic tech and all these other buzzwords going on for a couple of, I don't know, last 7 years, let's say. It's nice to have technology we all use. We're dependent. I'm really panicking if my phone is dying, right? But there's more to it than tech, right? Tech can help you, but the context is important. So what I'm trying to say here, and keep this in mind while I go on with my presentation, is that tech is just the means. It's not the end goal. It's just a means to an end goal. And whenever you hear somebody, I don't know, how many of you have been part of hackathons? Maybe? No? No one? Okay, some of you. Okay. So you've seen the hackathons, right? I haven't got any product out of it that I can still use today, but I managed to keep the enthusiasm of the people and collaborate with them on the longer run. So it's usually this initial enthusiasm that's like, oh, let's build an app. I have this idea. And I'm like, oh, great, another app. Okay. So that's the disclaimer I want you to keep in mind. And also, what about tech? Let's get a bit philosophical, right? What is tech really? I mean, this is why I put a fork, because, well, the fork is not necessarily a new technology, right? But when it was invented, it was a huge breakthrough, right? So how do you define tech? Is voting through mail technology? Of course, when we say tech today, we probably mean a mobile phone app or something online, right? Or maybe something digital, maybe a smart ballot box that knows how to count your votes like they have in Moldova. I think they do it in Moldova. They count it on the fly, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, what about social media? Is it civic tech? Probably not. Maybe can be used for, I don't know. Okay, so I wanted to reflect on this also. What is your definition of civic tech? And luckily, there are some smart folks in the US that have already done a lot of work in this field, and they've been mapping out the projects of civic tech since 1994. You can see there's a big bubble in 2007, 2008, and there's also a big civic tech graveyard, because as I said, a lot of projects suffer from infant death, as I should put it. Okay, so I invite you to check it out. The website is civictech.guide. Okay, so let's get into it. Observing elections, yes, a strange hobby for some people. Personally, I was never an independent observer in a polling station. I know I've been involved in behind the scenes, and I was in the hotline, and I was assisting people, but for me to go and spend 24 hours or more in the polling station is a bit too much. But it's just me, you know. So people are different, and we're trying to make this thing which is quite technical, right? Democracy, observer. What is an observer, right? You cannot have observers in Hungary, understood. In Romania we can, but we need to explain people that they're not police officers in the polling stations, but yes, it's true that simply their presence there diminishes the risks of fraud, because when you see somebody maybe even dressed up with a suit and a tie, it matters. Okay. So you were mentioning about these electoral bribes. We actually did an exhibit of them. I will show you some pictures at the end. Let's talk about the 2019 presidential elections. It was the first time we piloted this app. We call it an app, but it's not in the App Store actually. It's just a web address. It was not really fancy, but it's quite useful. It's basically something that people are already familiar with. Like everybody uses Uber, Bolt, or other ride-sharing apps. So we imagined that we can have a spin-off and we can connect these independent observers, because they were scarce. We didn't have many. We had a couple of hundred, so we wanted them to visit more stations in the same day, right? So when we would receive tips, hey, there's something fishy going on there, a couple of cars going in and out, right? can you go there? Where are you? So we use this app to, well, this is kind of creepy now that I think about it, also monitor observers to know where they are, but we did it with their consent, obviously, so they knew where they were signing up, and they could easily take on a polling station that was featured in the app as risky. So the red flag thing was an innovation my colleague Elena did. She's such a big data geek, so, but before going to that, I would like to talk a bit about our X app, the app that we use that was developed by some other folks that we used to work with. It's called Vote Monitor and was developed by Code for Romania. I think they also issued it in Poland a couple of years ago. I don't know how much success they had back then. We were part of this coalition, of this bigger coalition, and the purpose of observing the elections in that coalition was to issue out a report at the end, basically. So we had a 40-page report. We launched it in an event like this. We invited the press and said, we found this and this and this. These were the main problems, and hopefully somebody will do something, and usually nobody did anything, right? So, long story short, we observed the elections with this coalition in 2016, a couple of rounds of elections, the referendum for, I don't know how should I put it, the hate referendum against gay people in 2019, which didn't pass because of the low turnout, so that's good that it didn't pass. And then we decided to quit the coalition because we had different visions and try to focus more instead on another outcome of the observing process. So basically Funky Citizens, the place I work for, is all about making citizens, as we say, civically fit, right? So we want them to be engaged with democracy as often as the opportunity arises. So our purpose was not to have a report in the end. Of course, we issued out a report, but our purpose was to make democracy somehow sexy for them, right? So they can come back and get involved and volunteer and donate and keep an eye on their politicians, right? So also the app was buggy. That was kind of nasty because we also issued it in a hurry, the previous app. And yes, as I mentioned, we quit the coalition and we partnered with others like-minded civil society organizations, such as ones working especially with young people, because there were a couple of, I think, 300,000 people that were eligible to vote in 2019 for the first time. So that's a huge pool. And if you catch them while they're young, like the companies do, you know, hook them on your product, right? So let's go now to the 2020 local elections. As I said, we try to make observing fun or funky. Funky, this word has two meanings in the English language. There is a funky smell when there's a rotten fish. You can see it at the end. There's a picture, I don't know if you can see it, with a rural toilet. We actually have a nice collection of pictures of toilets. It's funny, but it's also sad. It's funny because it's true. Lots of kids actually died while falling in toilets, but that's another topic. So some observers, yes, it's not funny. I know, I have the same reaction, but it's, so some observers were chasing cars, as you mentioned, so I have lots of videos of cars moving people in and out, and some got really bored and they were welcomed by the polling station people with cookies, not milk, just cookies, and cats, and they had a wonderful time. And we tried to market this as a somehow rediscover Romania, rural Romania tourism kind of thing, right? So go and, yeah, already? Okay, so let's cut to the chase then already, the time is short. So we issued out these badges and we wanted them to feel like they were part of the community. We had no tech team, so we did our own things. So I found out this website and we used this website for them to sign up. The process was quite complicated because we needed to pair them to polling stations because they had preferences. So first we had to validate them. They had to fill in an application, so they could easily do this online. Before, they were just signing papers and sending them as a scanned PDF, so we tried to digitalize the whole process. This is our Excel file that was, it's a small screenshot, it's a huge Excel file that was at the basis of our algorithm that determined the red flags. This is the taxi app, which I told you about. It's basically mixing sociology, big data with web development, so we aggregated two types of data, historical data and real-time data. I can go on about this if you have questions at the end. I'm not the one who did it. I understand the basics, but I'm happy to answer any questions. So basically, we would look on votes on additional lists and the normal benchmarks of each county and compare them and update them every 3 hours. So we only had 2 volunteer developers who did this app for us on a volunteer basis, and the polling stations, some of them, they had yellow color, so you could just take on them and go there and inspect if everything is okay, and then you can say, okay, it's okay, and then it turned green. Or if not, you can just call us. Yeah, I think this is about it. This is how the app would look behind the scenes. As admins, we could see where the people are throughout Romania, and we could easily relocate people from one polling station to the other. I have some stats, but I don't know how valid they are because we didn't really focus on collecting stats, but we had a couple of users from these stats, and yes, the main tech challenge was geocoding all the 19,000 polling stations, so to match them on the map, their precise location, because some of them change every year. So this is, I'm reaching the end. This is just, I think we can share the presentation so people can have a look and click on the links I put there, but I found out some third-party tools that the IT department used, right? So Jotform is a really nice thing of doing forms, probably $40 per month. Twilio automating SMS checks. This is the tech that the tech guys used, and also newsletters. And what's important is the WhatsApp groups that we had. We had a lot of WhatsApp groups. I'm really losing track of them. And also, because I work in the communication department, and if I have a hammer, all I see around me are nails, right? So I really believe in communication and the power of communication. So we also did a lot of videos that got like 8,000 shares. This one was targeted for the youth, done by a young guy explaining what the hell is going on with the European Parliament. So to sum up, this is what I wanted to leave you with. Tech is definitely not the whole answer, and don't duplicate if possible. For in our case, it was not possible because we split up from that coalition, but it turned out good in the end for both parties, and the team is really important. And yes, communication is important, and be humane. And in the end, I will leave you with the pictures from what we did. These are some stickers, and yeah, we did a whole exhibit with the kind of things. So basically, artists reinterpreted this kind of electoral bribes that were traditionally given out to voters, like a golden cartwheel, the scales of justice with some, I don't know, corn flour. What the hell is there? You can't really see the buckets with cooking oil, the prison of shovels, and what else. So that's about it. Thank you.